All right, well, let's go to the NFL, where a pretty significant trade went down Saturday. Sources telling Adam Schefter that the Commanders are acquiring Deebo Samuel from the Niners in exchange for a fifth-round draft pick. The deal can't formally be processed until the new league year starts on March 12th. Samuel will make $17.5 million this season on the final year of his deal. The Niners are going to take a $31.5 million dead money hit on this year's salary cap. All right, we need to get some much-needed perspective on this move that happened in the NFL. Let's bring in Lou Riddick at the Combine there in Indianapolis. All right, so Deebo, playmaker, obviously, and you add him to what we saw last season with this Commanders offense. How do you see this thing fitting together?
Yeah, I think the possibilities, Mike, are endless. I mean, if you're Cliff Kingsbury right now, you're going, look, now I've got a multi-dimensional threat that I can line up in multiple positions. And it just makes it all the more explosive overall from the offensive standpoint, and helps out Jayden Daniels. Think about it. I mean, Deebo can line up as a traditional running back, and you don't know if he's just going to catch passes out of the backfield or if he's going to run inside or outside zone like a normal running back. And on top of it, when you factor that in with the RPO capabilities of Jayden Daniels, that just makes them all the more explosive. Then on third down, if you want to line him up in the backfield, if you want to put him in the slot, heck, if you want to motion him out wide, Deebo can do that too. So this is just another playmaker to add to guys like Terry McLaurin, Diami Brown. And it's just going to make their offense much more multiple, much more down the field explosive. And on top of it, here's the kicker for me, though, Mike. Deebo Samuel, pound for pound, may be the toughest guy in the NFL. I know he has some injury history, but the injury history comes from the fact that he has no fear in him, and he takes to fight two defenses. And that's something that's just going to help Washington and help hopefully get them over the top from their perspective in one of the toughest conferences, or rather one of the toughest divisions in football. So I absolutely love the acquisition. I think the more they can do this, the better. And I think Jayden Daniels right now is sitting there thinking, that's what I'm talking about. That now we're rolling. Now we have some more weapons to deal with that Death Star in Philadelphia that we have to somehow see if we can battle with.
And that's the thing. You wonder the leap that Daniels would take from his rookie year to his sophomore year, but you add someone like Deebo, that leap could be exponential just because he has options. Much more from Lou coming up a little bit later. By the way, Niners fans, you do not play the Commanders next.
You can't really replace Deebo. He's one of the most unique players in the NFL because of what he can do. Deebo's a hell of a football player. I'd love sharing the field with him. If that's what happens and he's traded, I'll be very sad. But at the same time, I'm always happy for guys to get opportunities, and that's all you're going to ask for in the NFL. The 49ers have been objectively better with Deebo on the field the last 4 seasons, averaging over half a yard more per play with Deebo on field, better QBR. Their EPA per play is twice as good. In fact, that EPA per play would rank as the best in the NFL since 2021. And over the last 2 years, San Fran 0-4 in games he's missed, 6 fewer points per game. But Jeremy, it's been pretty quiet since Deebo made this trade request. What's the level of interest in the league around him?
Phil, there's some interest. I just checked in on this. I was told that several teams have expressed interest. So at least preliminary talks on a potential trade have happened between Samuel, his agent, and the team. The question is, are these teams willing to wait him out to force the 49ers to potentially cut him or not? So to trade him, there's some cap implications for that. He's got a $15 million roster bonus due later next month. And so that really at least sets an artificial deadline here. And so there's going to be interest. It's just a matter of whether teams willing up to give draft compensation and pay that option bonus. They're not down the road yet as far as contract negotiations on a new deal. Still very early in the process.
And Marcus, for the 49ers, I mean, we've hit on the stats. They spent a first-round pick on Ricky Pearsall. They've extended 2 other wide receivers. Assuming Deebo does depart, how much will his absence affect the 49ers offense?
I mean, it'll affect them a little bit, because I'm sure Kyle Shanahan had packages for Deebo Samuel throughout games to kind of exploit advantages against defenses. But ultimately, the cupboard is not bare. Injuries killed this team last year. That was the reason. You still would have George Kittle. You still would have Brandon Ayuk. You still would have Ricky Pearsall, their first-round draft pick that you mentioned, Phil. There's a lot of guys. And more importantly, CMC coming out of the backfield, barring his health as well. So this offense doesn't have to change because of the absence of Deebo Samuel. Now, you do lose a dynamic playmaker, especially a run-after-catch guy. He has some drops this year, which I'm sure he'll fix. That's not been his history. I'm a big fan of Deebo Samuel. I think everybody knows that if you're a fan, if you watch NFL Live, I think he changes the way defenses have to play you, and you have to be cognizant of the matchups when he's in the game. I think there'll be a lot of teams that can utilize him in a very significant way without him having to be the main guy at the wide receiver spot or whatever you deem him positionally.
Yeah, I think Marcus hit the nail on the head when he said that this was a team-wide issue in terms of all of the injuries on the offense contributing to what we saw last season. One thing that really jumped out to me, the Niners went from ranking first league-wide in yards after catch per reception to 20th. And some of that had to do with a little bit of decline from Deebo. A lot of it had to do with Christian McCaffrey and Brandon Ayuk, by the way, not being in the offense. Because while Brandon Ayuk isn't a yak guy, he creates space for players to work underneath. So getting those players back will help. I still think that if they move on from Deebo, even with those players coming back, though, they need to find a receiver who can work underneath, especially with Ayuk back in the fold. Especially because not only is Kyle Shanahan so good at creating those opportunities to get yards after the catch, but you got a quarterback in Brock Purdy who throws the ball quickly and accurately. So you want skill players who can benefit from that, particularly over the middle of the field. So if I'm San Francisco and I move on, that is something I am thinking about when I look at the draft. Are there players who can sort of not replicate Deebo's skill set because he truly was a unicorn, but at least contribute in that way?
Yeah, the 49ers believe this cupboard is not bare, that Juwan Jennings can make another jump. Just like he did last year, he can do so in 2025. Ricky Pearsall, they believe in him. Yeah. But one key component here that I was told from a couple people around the league is the 49ers want a drama-free offseason. Last year was difficult. They didn't have great participation in their offseason workouts. They had players holding out for new deals. They're hoping to kind of just strip things back and get back to what they do best, which is play good football.
To what do you attribute what Jeremy said about the limited market or appetite for Deebo Samuel here?
A market is only 2 or 3 teams if they're willing to sign you and put you in a role that's phenomenal. There are very few players that are going to have 15, 20, or even 31 teams wanting to depend on their services or even ask about them. We got one guy that's coming up later in the show, and Myles Garrett, who will be that guy. But Deebo will have his suitors. He'll have people that believe that if they implement him into this offense, that he can be that playmaker that they saw him be in San Francisco. And obviously, new scenery is a real thing in the NFL. There are opportunities on other organizations and franchises that may reinvigorate Deebo. He's been in San Francisco. They've been knocking at the door of Super Bowls. They weren't able to get it done. So it may be a newfound energy when he ends up with in a new place.
O-line is a chief concern in KC. Patrick Mahomes' average time to throw just 2.8 seconds, 2024. That's the shortest of his career. Also sacked 47 times. 10 more than any other season. The 6 sacks he took in Super Bowl 59 were a career high. Not the type of career high you want in that game. And all very related news, Mahomes posted a career worst 67 QBR. Marcus, given the issues we saw from KC last season, how important is it for Kansas City to try to keep Smith?
Very important. I mean, we saw Milt Williams and Jalen Carter in the Super Bowl have their way. And I'm not casting that aspersion on Trey Smith, who's been phenomenal for the Kansas City Chiefs. But solidifying this offensive line is probably going to be priority number one while Patrick Mahomes is your quarterback. And we know why. But when you think about Trey Smith and you think about guards, and this is why I love the offseason, one of my favorite times of the year to talk football, is you don't miss guards until you don't have one. And your quarterback getting his head bashed in for majority of the game. So I know this is going to be difficult for the Kansas City Chiefs. You just alluded to it again, Phil, with the